Bastard's daddy doesn't even know it yet.
Okay guys, it's Paul from Alt Game Reviews and it's finally the day. The Mafia review is here. So, I'll be honest with you, when I first decided to pick up the newly remastered Mafia game, I didn't have high expectations. A few months ago, I gave Mafia 3 a shot on PS Now, but I just ended up losing interest and not finishing the game. It just felt a little too repetitive and the story just really didn't grip me as much as other recent single player games have. So, I was a little apprehensive when I decided to pick up the definitive edition of the first game. However, there was some buzz about it and it wasn't the full price, so I thought I'd give it a shot. So if you're not aware, this is a remastered edition of the original Mafia game, which was released 18 years ago on PS2, PC and the OG Xbox. But this isn't your usual run-of-the-mill remaster with some touched up graphics between console generations. This is a full, top to bottom reimagining of the game, with completely new assets, character models and additional story content. I didn't play the original, so I can't comment too much on the changes, but I know that it was essentially a founding father of open world gangster games. It received high praise from reviewers for its realistic and down-to-earth story in comparison to the more over-the-top campaigns of the early GTA games. I can appreciate the legacy of the franchise and the acclaim that is attached to the original game, but for me this review will just focus solely on the remaster and won't be a direct comparison. It's my impressions of coming to the game firsthand, and do I think it's worth it. Hopefully it shouldn't be too hard for you to figure out what the main story revolves around. But to give you a little insight, you play as Tommy Angelo through his rise from hopeless cabbie to powerful enforcer in the Salieri crime family. It's set to the backdrop of 1930s America and the fictional city of Lost Heaven, which is inspired by Chicago. We'll take part in multiple gangster-themed missions from bank robberies and moonshine deals to mob hits and debt collection. Driving around the city, listening to the radio, we'll hear the host discussing the national news, such as prohibition of alcohol, as well as local stories regarding your recent escapades around town. The story's great, it's a tale of family versus the family. Tommy has to wrestle with his loyalties to his wife and his daughter, as well as his brothers in arms as part of the Salieri family. We'll start out with a wisecracking, albeit down in his luck cabbie with no wife and no prospects during the time of the Great Depression. Tommy then winds up getting himself involved with the Mafia after Salieri goons Sammy and Polly rope him into a car chase with the rival Morello gang. Soon after, he's invited into the family by the Don and begins his climb towards the top of the gangster establishment. Missions start out simple enough as you'd expect. Drive here, a little debt collection there. But quickly things escalate and we're dealing in illegal prohibition Canadian moonshine as well as the assassination of prestigious politicians. As the game progresses, the whole gang get involved in riskier businesses and tensions form within the family. I think the story does struggle to really blow you out of the water, especially in a post Red Dead Redemption 2 world, as we've kinda all seen it before, and to be honest done better. It's not that it doesn't succeed in being a noteworthy story, I just think it could have done with a lot more padding out in the single player campaign, but from what I've heard there's even more additional dialogue and missions added compared to the original. I won't spoil what happens, there's a twist and it just kinda happens a little bit too quickly, and with games like Red Dead 2 where relationships with characters are fleshed out so much in individual missions, I just think it doesn't have as much of an impact. I understand that they need to follow what happened in the original game and stay true to the story. Tommy is your usual sort of lovable anti-hero. He's an outlaw who's always just a little shy of pulling the trigger when he needs to, a bit like Arthur Morgan, and is somewhat of a moral compass unlike much of his mates. But I'll leave it there for you to experience the plot for yourself. Right, on to the gameplay. It's essentially a realistic Grand Theft Auto, with stripped back weapons and a lack of customisation. It's not a bad thing per se as it suits the atmosphere of the game, but there is a sacrifice of player freedom for the sake of immersion. Don't pick it up expecting a retro reskin of GTA. It's an open world game and it does look fantastic, however there's not really much to do in that world outside of the story missions. There is a free roam mode with a couple of extra side missions, the majority of which revolve around the driving, which we haven't touched on yet. From what I understand, fans of the original Mafia really enjoyed it for its simulation mechanics, which results in the cars driving like boats. I understand that it's different from GTA and it's its own thing, car chases that revolve around jumps and precise movement. When you have this realistic car, it just doesn't really fit together, and eventually you just get frustrated in trying to beat the missions. In Freyroam, there's no rival gangs to have shootouts with. There's collectibles to find in the form of cigarette cards, magazines, some weird folk statues. Completing the side missions, you'll get a couple of new costumes as well as some golden reskins. There are a couple that aren't driving based, there's a bank robbery, and there's even one that's, let's say, out of this world. That'll only add a couple of hours to your game time. Overall, it'll probably take you 12 to 15 hours to finish the main story. Why these modes are separated out, I'm not really sure. I definitely think that the main campaign could have done with some side missions for filler between the main missions, and it especially would have been better to have some side missions with, say, the mechanic or the guy that works in the armory, just to form more of a relationship. There's not much more to say. It's not a big game, it's not a big package, it's not a long game, other than to score it. So I mean, like, what's my recommendation for Mafia? Well, if I had to score it, I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10. My last review was Mortal Shell and I gave that an 8 as well. Did I enjoy this more or less? Probably to the same extent. Did I have any issues with the game? It could have done with more content, but again, it's not a full price game. There was some issues, I had some sound issues. You can notice the lack of shotgun sounds here. And sometimes it crashed on me, the game engine. But all in all, I did enjoy the story, but a lack of content does stop it from being a 9 or 10.